Welcome to the Futurist Society podcast, where we delve into the latest advancements in technology, science, and culture. The Futurist Society is your window into all of the awesomeness that the future holds.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Futurist Society, where as always we are talking in the present but talking about the future. As always, I also have an awesome guest for you today, and we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence with Brooke Hartley Moy, who is the CEO and co-founder of Infactory, which is an artificial intelligence company. And I'm really excited to have you. Thank you so much for having us, for coming on today, Brooke. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Infactory.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. Excited to be here. We are focused specifically on the issue of accuracy and trustworthiness within AI. And how we approach that is that we work with enterprises for whom accuracy and fidelity is paramount and key to their core brand and workflows, and help them build agents, applications, and experiences that have full auditability of their data, have kind of end-to-end query control, and reduce overall hallucinations so that, there's trust in the answers that are being provided by the solutions that they're building.
So one of the aspects that I had read a little bit about is that you guys were thinking about using this for journalism. Is that correct? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, that's a huge part of our customer base is media and journalism, particularly traditional publishers. That largely came out actually in some of our early experiences working with transformative technology in a previous job where my co-founder Ken and I met. We were really aware of the fact that the future of AI and the future of large language models, transformer models, which are the technology that powers most of the AI solutions that you're probably familiar with, like ChatGPT and Claude from Anthropic, and really basically anything that people are calling AI these days is running an LLM under the hood. And what was interesting for us is that it was clear that in order for LLMs to continue to be a useful and successful technology, there also is still going to need to be a strong amount of content and data being produced by high quality publishers. Because at the end of the day, the models are only as good as the data that they are being trained on, the data that they're fetching, the data that they're being fine-tuned on, the data that they're grounded in. And so we sought out to figure out how do we help the publisher and media and journalist ecosystem be successful in this new AI age, because that foundation was going to be so critical for the entire industry.
So I think journalism is something that's super interesting to me because we look to that to be part of our understanding of the truth. It's certainly the truth of what's happening out in the rest of the world. And, everything that I hear that's negative about the large language models is the fact that there's hallucinations, that you don't know what's real and what's not. And I guess like how are you managing those two things? Because I know that that's kind of what your whole ball of wax is to gain veracity, to make sure everything is accurate. But I'm not sure how that's happening.
Yeah. So for us, what it really comes down to is that we recognize that for journalists, for publishers, how their information is presented is the key pain point that they have within AI, right? Like if you are The Atlantic and you're producing long form content and it's being summarized in an AI chatbot, even small differences in how that information is being sort of repackaged can change the tone or the meaning of an article completely, and completely then devalue sort of this 100-plus-year-old brand that's based on sort of integrity and quality content. Or if you're someone more like Weather Company, where you're a company that basically sells accuracy in weather, as as accurate as weather forecasts can be, you have put a stake at the ground about to a 10th of degree specificity that you're going to be able to say what the temperature is outside of San Francisco. So there's kind of different spectrums of how they're thinking about veracity, but it's kind of a thread across the whole industry. And for us, in terms of how we have sort of represented those interests in our technology, is this idea that rather than relying on just sort of the out of the box LLM that, again, powers a lot of the technology that we see right now. And rather than applying sort of traditional, what they call like retrieval augmented generation, which is kind of the buzzword du jour around accuracy in AI, but still has sort of a probabilistic component, we've developed our own sort of proprietary query methodology, which is all about how do you basically take out that degree of generative chaos when it comes to actually like retrieving an answer. So that's to say is that we're using the like best parts of AI, which are around like being able to search over a large corpus of information very quickly, being able to like combine different data sources in order to come up with a complex answer, being able to have like idea generation and creativity and all the things that like make LLMs really beautiful and magical. But when it comes to the like core components of find a factual answer or represent a piece of journalist content in the way that the publisher wants it represented, we've created the guardrails around that so that there is no generative element within it.
I'm kind of a layperson when it comes to artificial intelligence. Like I'm using it in my life for real basic stuff, like looking up vacations for my family and like that stuff. But what I see like as an outsider is there is some introduction of bias, which it seems like that's kind of what you're talking about. I'm not sure if I'm understanding you entirely with the difference between the different examples that you gave. But when I see like Google makes a picture of the founding fathers and like they're all minorities, I think that that's something that everybody can kind of understand. Okay, there's some sort of bias that's being introduced into Google. Is that kind of like what you guys are trying to correct for also?
So I would say that we are focused less on bias correction, though it is sort of all baked into the same cake, if you will. The reason that you see biases, right, it's just because LLMs are trained on the open web. They're trained on human generated content. And so the same biases that exist in our society at large are obviously then going to be represented in a model. And that it's very hard to correct for that. There are strategies you can take with fine tuning, but it doesn't, at the end of the day, humans have created this technology. And even though it is artificial, it's constrained by like what it's seen from its like past training set. Our viewpoint is that one of the things that helps biases, though it's sort of like kind of a side effect, I think, of our work, is that if you can, instead of asking, for example, an LLM to create a picture of the founding fathers, you go out and you fetch a picture of the founding fathers that was produced by the Associated Press, you are going to have something that is probably more aligned with accuracy, given that content was pulled directly from a source. Obviously, there are situations where you're, like I said, with creativity, where you're going to be wanting to generate new images and things from scratch. So it all just sort of depends on your use case and how exactly you want to apply the technology.
Interesting. Do you think that in the future we're going to be interacting more so with AI to gain our news than with actual news sources?
Yes, I think that within the next 5 years, the biggest changes that are going to happen are, one, I don't think humans are going to be actually going to web pages or landing on the homepage for the New York Times in the same way that it has become increasingly archaic to actually have like a full, newspaper delivered to your home. There will still be some subset of people that, prefer kind of the curated experience. But what will happen is that you will have like an agentic workflow on your behalf, or like a personalized agent that knows what kind of content you're interested in, knows what articles to look for, knows what information to look for, and then it's going to give you a very personalized, curated news experience. And so that's the future that we're also helping a lot of our customers prepare for, because it's a big change when you have sort of traditional interactions where, today you probably, if you want your news, you go to CNN.com or you go to watch it on MSNBC, or you open your phone and, read the Wall Street Journal. I don't think many people will be actually going to owned properties within a very short time frame.
Yeah, I kind of get that experience. I look at all my news from Google News, which is this configuration of what is popular right now, plus specifically geared towards me. Like I have futurism, technological articles that are coming up on my newsfeed. But do you have any reservations about just like the bias that would introduce, right? Like if I'm only getting content that I want to see, am I really seeing all the content that I need to see?
And it's a real risk. Like I think it's something that has been weighing heavily on society basically since like the advent of the news feed. Like that technology's been around for a long time. Even the advent of search engines, really, is kind of the original version of that. And then it really got hyper personalized with the launch of Facebook, and then algorithms, and the not that algorithms were a new technology, but algorithms is applied to this particular use case to like maximize sort of attention. I think what makes me optimistic about how news will be consumed without sort of introducing bias is that one of the things that AI does is that it does allow for not just personalization, but actually like expansion of creativity and ideation. And that's something that's very different from how our current sort of media assets are set up for. And they're just like not sophisticated enough for that. And so, it's going to be somewhat up to us because, again, we're the ones building those systems. But, one of the things like we work with a lot with our partners is like, how do they reach audiences that they've never been able to reach before because it hasn't been financially viable for them to do so. And if the model is less about just having eyeballs on your homepage, and instead, like, can you answer this like particular question that a person has in a very specific way on a very precise bit of data, it gives you a lot more ways in which you can actually reach people that didn't traditionally participate maybe in your news cycle. So like the example I would give, like going back to maybe the Atlantic, the Atlantic demographic is, highly educated, largely represented in certain geographic areas, partly because like the nature of their content, like they paywall it, it's long form articles and, magazine format. But if their content could actually be delivered now in sort of a different format that's like much more democratized and people can discover it in ways that they couldn't before, that has the potential to actually be mind expanding, if you will, rather than, limiting as far as bias. So, it's going to be up to us, but I think that the technology potential is there to reduce some of the ill effects of what had happened in sort of the newsfeed era.
Yeah, I would be very much for anything that democratizes technology. I feel like that was one of the best parts of the internet in its infancy. Like a guy with a food truck could set up a website and get some virality, and his business could go off because of that. And now it almost seems like we have these gatekeepers like Facebook, Google, all these things that you have to pay specific advertising. There's certain strategies to maximize your visibility on those things. And I wonder, all of the stuff that I'm seeing from artificial intelligence, I wonder how much of that is going to be democratized. Can you shed some insight from your perspective? Do you think that that's how it's going to happen? Or do you think it's going to be large organizations that get the lion's share of this access?
It's interesting, right? Because, here in Silicon Valley, you can kind of see both sides playing out. Like if you just look at, for example, the startup ecosystem, right? Like on the one hand, you have very large organizations like an OpenAI who are, calling these mega valuations and are sort of trying to build almost like the next super app as far as the number of different like use cases and coverage areas. And then on the other end, like it's never been a more exciting time to be like a builder in the technology space, because previously to start a company and to be in a position to sort of democratize technology access, you needed a pretty deep engineering background. AI has like completely changed that, where you're seeing more and more founders who don't have traditional sort of coding engineering backgrounds, but know enough to use kind of the next generation of AI tools that are only getting better. And so I use that as sort of like a metaphor writ large for like where I see AI kind of opening things up of like winner take all versus democratization. I think there's like room for both. Like I think that what is different about this technology cycle versus the last one, where you had ended up with like the Googles and the Amazons of the world, is that you needed a lot of resources and people and highly skilled people in like the R&D space and in the technology and software engineering space in order to basically build these kinds of companies, like generational companies. Now you're seeing companies that are making, millions of dollars in revenue a year with, a handful of people. And so there's like this kind of new distribution of like who has access to what, because the traditional gatekeeping around talent has really shifted, with AI kind of introducing kind of new access points for people that want to build.
Yeah, I certainly can see that. My concern was mainly around the idea of someone that can use technology to advance their own agenda, and you know basically use technology as a force multiplier, right? So, like for example, if I write a book, I can do that, and I can put it out there on Amazon. I can put some content out there on YouTube. I can try my best to advertise this in a non-traditional way, and I could gain a following with that, right? Um, I guess my worry is that if unless I am the Atlantic that has access to a company like yours that I can partner with, is that something that will be out of reach for someone that's like a solo publisher, or somebody that's starting out in their journey of like making a comic book, or like I said, like a food truck or something like that?
No, I think honestly, the ways in which people are going to be discovered and found, I think actually only improve with AI, because, one of the, to your point about the way that the kind of early internet was able to kind of create places for creators to find their like niche audiences, the personalization of AI enables like an even like higher degree of sort of niche connection, and it creates like a degree of scale that was previously unavailable to like a kind of solo entrepreneurial bootstrapping kind of founder or company or content side. Like the example I would give is, I think there's going to be a whole host of people that have been traditionally only serving maybe like 1% type customers. So, like, you think about a personal stylist, or you think about a personal shopper, or anyone, or a nutritionist, like anything that is traditionally required a lot of time and therefore is expensive and resource intensive for a single person to do. So, basically, they charge prices that box out most of the market. I think a lot of those people are now going to be in a position to use AI to greatly expand their current capabilities, and as a result reach a broader audience and potentially become more than just sort of a singlepreneur type business, but actually do a lot more in terms of their reach. So that's just one example, but I do think that in many ways AI is more of a multiplier than kind of even the traditional internet was.
Yeah. What do you think about books? Because I'm writing a book right now, and I feel like it's coming. It's like it's a lost art. I feel like a dinosaur. Like I talk to all my friends. I'm like, hey, what's the last book you read? And they're like, I haven't really read a book.
Like, you're talking to the right person, because I'm a big reader, and I also write on the side as sort of my, well, in a pre-founder life, I wrote on the side. I don't have a lot of time for extra things right now, but
But do you think that do you think the ecosystem is like people like us that are writing for other people like us? Like that's what I see as an outsider, just because there's so much content that's available, and AI is just going to make it that much easier to get that content.
Yes, I think that in like that particular area, first of all, I mean, it was already highly disrupted when you see kind of how much Amazon has taken over, and you've got unlimited subscriptions on Amazon, where I think they're paying people, like pennies on the dollar for their content. So we were already like in kind of like the dark ages, I think, of book publishing and writing, and kind of the devaluation of written content. I think what will be interesting, though, is that as AI generated content becomes almost indistinguishable from human generated content, there will be a degree in which I think people will develop like almost a premium on human generated content. This is going very far afield. I have no deep expertise in this. It's literally just something that I see a little bit happening already on the technology side, where there's this feeling of like human generated code versus AI generated code. And so I think that there's a world where like human generated content will remain interesting to a subset of people and potentially maybe democratize access, because now you have sort of the increased engagement and increased platform awareness of like where to find these kinds of things. But it is, I can't sugarcoat that I think it's not a tough time to be someone who's writing right now. Like it's just an interesting inflection point. I still like to think I can outright an AI, but I don't know how much longer that will be true.
Good for you, because I don't think I can. Because I like ChatGPT is just so good that it's very difficult for me to gain the same kind of inspiration that I do, because I just know that like I could just type the same thing in, and I use it as like an editor right now, right? And so like I will just like write it out free form and then ask for it to edit, and it's always better. It's consistently better. So maybe that is a reflection of my writing skills, but it could also be the fact that I look at it and I'm like, a dinosaur or a vinyl record or something like that is becoming less and less.
To me, what's interesting though is that I think like, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn because of my job and being, try to be reasonably active on LinkedIn for getting kind of thought leadership out there. And to me, I'm like, when I read what's on LinkedIn, I'm like, I can tell this is all AI generated. Like there's like little sort of ticks to the cadence and the tone. And then it's like reinforcing itself, because now when I tell it, write a LinkedIn comment, it's going to just look at all the other comments and basically base it off of that. And so it's like this like snake eating its tail problem. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, it's kind of junk, it's not like it's poorly written, but it's just like so clearly like it's kind of the way that social media got to a certain point where with the filters and the way that the photos looked, like people stopped liking overly cultivated images and they actually like backlash against that to something a little bit more authentic. So we'll see where we end up, I think, at the end of all this.
Where do you hope that we end up?
It's a good question. I think, like I said, I'm AI optimist. So I believe that one of the biggest benefits to this is that many of the tasks that today are a source of like either like drudgery, take away from sort of higher level thinking, and are like unsafe, so you think about like automation for things like construction work or factory work or areas where, as much as the disruption in those areas is painful when you think about loss of jobs, you're also thinking about like those kinds of jobs have always largely been kind of the hardest jobs for people to do and not necessarily the best quality jobs. And so I would like to think that AI takes away and automates away a lot of those parts of what it means to work. And what remains is then an opportunity to sort of, in collaboration with AI, do much more of the sort of judgment, higher level thinking, creative level thinking. That means that we're much more likely to, solve some of the really hard problems when we're not distracted by, how do I write this email?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can I tell you what I hope that comes out of this whole AI shenanigan?
Would love to hear it.
I want like a best bud, somebody that is just like, Imran, you should really do your laundry right now. It's getting a little bit out of control. And then I say, listen, I don't want to do my laundry. I have other things to do. And then it automatically talks to my humanoid robot and just does it for me. All of the admin work of 2025, I want that to go away. All of those things, but then also have some sort of relationship with it that's personalized just for me. So for all those builders out there that are listening, make it happen.
It sounds like you want her. You want
no. I don't want dystopian science fiction. I want utopian science fiction.
Yeah. Well, I think her was not very I think her is one of the most positive views of technology that I've seen in terms of film, and that it got dystopian, I guess, in terms of falling in love with the AI, but it was mostly like a view of the world in which AI like has humans' best interest at heart. And it's funny because you say best bud, because sometimes I joke that ChatGPT is my therapist
Mm-hmm.
because I'll ask questions about some problem that I'm having or something that I'm stressed out about, and then the way that it talks to you, where it always asks sort of a follow up question. Like the other day, it asked me if it wanted to create a mantra that I could put on my phone to like reinforce positive thinking throughout my day. And I was just thinking, I'm like, wow, this has really gotten to a point where I feel a personal connection to
Yeah.
this chatbot.
And that's becoming very common. Like I read about in the newspaper, or the news that I filtered through Google News, that a lot of people are having that sentiment. And if we're going to have that sentiment anyway, like let's have it be beneficent, be our best friend, like I really want that for my kids to have, somebody that's just like universally nurturing, right? Like just, I just got my 3-year-old this like little dinosaur that has like an AI, a little bit of AI hardware in it, and she has like conversations with it as if like that is her best friend. And realistically, like they might have a connection with something that's non-human that is more significant, more impactful than even with like another truly human best friend. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. Like I think that all of us we need nutrition, we need water, we need sunlight, we need all of these things, just like a plant. But one of those important things is that we do also need some sort of reinforcement. We need support. We need other things that I think that we don't always get in human nature in 2025. So that's what I hope for. I hope that it's all packaged in one nice thing that I could also get great news articles out of, and hopefully it will suggest me nice books. But I don't know if you've thought of any other use cases that might be a little bit atypical than what's being provided to us right now.
Yeah, I think that as far as atypical use cases, I feel like we're just starting to see the tip of this with ChatGPT doing memory, and it kind of relates to what you're talking about, where right now a lot of the ways that people use it is sort of like a supercharged like Siri or Alexa, or a supercharged Google News basically. But now that people have realized that ChatGPT is actually storing information about you, like I don't know if you saw the prompt that I think was pretty viral recently of like asking ChatGPT like what are your personal blind spots. I think that this idea of sort of the social implications of AI have been sort of underplayed. And so we've kind of thought about it as sort of like less of an assistant, and to your point, like more like a friend or relationship side of
Mm-hmm.
things. And I feel like that is very much in my mind sort of one of the next waves of where things will go, particularly because one of the areas we've made the most progress in with AI is the lifelike nature of it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it's one of the dangers because it does still get things wrong. It does still hallucinate, but it does so in such a confident way because it sounds so human-like and so real. Like one of my favorite AI tools is Notebook LM, where you can basically make like anything into a podcast. And it always blows me away that it's like, because it's a conversation. So it's two people, two AI voices. My husband likes to tell like long, funny stories. And I literally put one of his stories in there for him and had it turn into a podcast where like they're like talking about it. And I mean, it was amazing. Like if I had shown that to someone that didn't know it was an AI, I think they would have believed that it was like two real people that I had somehow gotten to like make a podcast for me. So
Awesome.
I think, yeah. So I think that like that lifelike element of it, the fact that we've made so much progress in that area means that in some ways the like social and emotional benefits of AI are like more ahead of like the enterprise workflow, use it for legal, use it for finance, use it for healthcare type use cases.
I want to ask you more about some of the other AI tools that you're using that maybe I don't know about, or maybe some other people might not know about. But I do want to just like kind of put a pin in this idea of like being like a social tool for us. And there was an experiment that was done back in the 50s or 60s where they gave young baby monkeys to really soft and really cuddly maternal substitute, and something that was very sharp, and like they couldn't really have any sort of affection with it. And the monkeys that had this soft maternal substitute lived totally normal lives, developed normally. Obviously, the one with the really off-putting maternal substitute did not do well. Like they ended up, being overly aggressive or having a ton of different problems. And to me, like I think that's something that I hope to see from the AI community, but I don't know if it's out there. And that's another reason why I want to know if like there's anything that you know of something that is like a friendship substitute or just like a support substitute, because that's something I feel like is super lacking in today's society, right? Like although we have more connectedness than ever before. There's a male loneliness epidemic. There's just a loneliness epidemic.
Right.
And so, so that's something that I was hoping that's out there, because I do think it would be fine if it came from a robot or if it came from, a chatbot, something like that. So do you know of anything that is out there like that? And then also, do you know of what are some other tools that you're using that we may not know about?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that the company that my co-founder and I were working at prior to starting Infactory was working in the space of AI hardware and largely thinking about this idea of kind of like an AI companion. That tech actually was now acquired by Hewlett Packard. And so they actually spun out a separate group called HPIQ. And I'm very curious to see, it's a bunch of really brilliant people who had previously worked at Apple and have been very involved in the original iPhone. And so they're some of the most like empathetically oriented technologists. And so I think that whatever comes out of there, there's always the paranoia I have of like HP, as a big company, what does that mean for what they're actually going to end up building? But their focus area had been on sort of this like more human, like empathetic AI experience. There's a few other companies that have been building kind of similarly kind of on the hardware side. There's Rabbit made a product that was kind of meant to be like a little companion, very cute.
Heard all
didn't
about
work.
That.
Yeah, didn't kind of deliver on the technology side, but I think the vision was there. I have a product called BEE that is a bracelet, but the idea is that it's sort of recording your memories as you go. So it's a little Black Mirror, but I think what's interesting about it is that it's really catered towards this idea of I have a young child. And so this idea of like having a way to sort of collect moments as they're happening.
So are you like talking into it? Is that how you're recording the memory?
Yeah. So So you can kind of record that. And it knows its location tracking. So it's kind of like knowing where you are. You have to kind of embrace the idea that some of these devices are going to know a lot about you. Even the Ray-Ban Meta Ray-Bans do this really effectively.
Yeah, I'm like on the verge of getting those, but
especially if you have young children, I highly recommend, because it creates this like nice bit of presence that you have with your kid when you're, like if you're like any other parent, I'm big on like holding the phone in front of my kid to take pictures. And with the Meta Ray-Bans, you can record and take photos just in a kind of very like subtle way, and you're like still in the moment with them. I use them at like Disney World where we're in rides together, and rather than like trying to like document everything with my phone, there's sort of this presence. I think on the side of is there like a more humanoid sort of friend experience? There's a lot happening on like the software side there. Like there literally is like friend.com where they got a lot of buzz for paying for that particular domain. And so I think that we're going to see very, very soon something that is the combination of both the hardware and the software progression in this area. So there's a bunch of cool things, I think, that are like right on the cusp in terms of like where the technology is. And like the fact that like usually that's going to be married with some kind of hardware experience if you're talking about kind of the social side of it as well.
What else are you using like in your own life?
So some of the ones that I love, I'm a big Lovable user. So I don't know if so that's a prototype and like kind of mock-up tool. So I use it a lot actually at work because I don't have UX design skills and I'm not a front-end engineer. But when I'm talking to the team and I'm describing something of like an idea I had or something that a customer told me that they'd be interested in building, I can literally just type in natural language a prompt and it will build me like a working prototype or like a working MVP. And in fact, I have a friend who is running her own business right now. She has no coding skills whatsoever. Not to, you're brilliant, Josefina. I'm not putting you down, but she was able to get like an entire application spun up just using Lovable.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it's really just a point about democratizing access. If you're sort of the mom and pop shop or a single entrepreneur, or you're someone without traditional technical skills, the ability to give people like visual demonstrations of what I want the team to build is huge and saves me so much time from either trying to explain it or having someone mock something up for me, or even showing to customers kind of like what I'm thinking about. So that's a big one. I mentioned Notebook LLM, which I love for me too, because I commute here in the Bay Area. Like I spend like 2 hours in my car every day. And so having like an audio, like I'll sometimes ask it to do like basically a podcast version of, articles that I'm trying to catch up on reading, or have it do a report that I received from someone, and just like basically create like the audio version of that.
Hmm.
Is kind of a nice like little like time hack. So that's a big one. And then the team here, it has become very pro using Cursor as their, major coding co-pilot. And it's amazing. I mean, my co-founder has been coding for 30 years, more than 30 years. And he's like, I've never been so efficient and so able to, he's like, I basically feel like I have another like junior engineer that like sits on my desk and like does a lot of the like kind of basic blocking and tackling. And then I can just sort of manage that junior engineer to just significantly like supercharge my output.
That's
So
great.
it's a cool time.
Yeah. So, in regards to my own journey into writing and all this stuff, I know you work with a lot with like publishers and with journalists and stuff like that. How is it going to be a different experience for the solo writer now? And any tools that I could leverage to make myself more efficient or get my message out there a little bit easier?
So there's Writer, which I think is trying to get gear itself more enterprise, but
Hmm.
they have built kind of a very robust prompt library around content creation. And
Mm.
so it's a little bit like you're kind of buying custom prompts from them that they have sort of refined to give you the best output, where you talk about how like you're using it as an editor. So like if in the case of an editing prompt, they've really thought about, okay, what do we need to tell the AI to do in order to give you the most effective editing experience, right? And I think that's actually something that's going to be really interesting, of like how prompts become kind of IP, if they can even be that. I think that what I see on the venture side, this is interesting. I see a lot of venture capitalists who like will put out sort of requests for companies, which is basically them saying they feel that there's a gap in the current market and they're not seeing it in the deal flow. And one of the things they want to see are more platforms for content creation, whether it's in the writing space, whether it's in the social like influencer space, image generation space, whatever, that solves for not just like right now we have things like Midjourney and Dolly, obviously from ChatGPT, they're doing some of the imaging things, but solves for that in a way that also allows it to be like a marketplace. So I saw one request for company from a VC that was basically like, where is the AI, the Wattpad AI? Like, where is the version in which like you're creating content and you're also finding your audience at the same time? And so I think that, I don't know, there's probably, whenever those kinds of things calls go out, there's usually a company that then pops up. So I think we're maybe like 6 months to a year away of seeing some of those companies start to float out, where it's like, oh, you're a writer, you are going to use this set of tools to really maximize your writing output, and you're also going to use the set of tools to find sort of fellow community members and share content and share assets and things like that.
It is so hard to keep up with all this stuff. Honestly, it's just I feel like it's like drinking from a fire hose. Like all these different things. Like when you're talking. I mean, ChatGPT exploded onto the scene what, like 2 years ago. Like it was not even that long, and now everybody's using it. It's crazy. And
It's building on quicksand. It's definitely as soon as you think you have it mastered, something happens and changes the whole thing.
yeah, and I think that like the the real tangible benefits have only been realized by a small section of the population too. Like even though everybody's talking about it, I don't really feel like we've even harnessed even like a small fraction of this stuff. And who knows what it's going to be. See, what do you think is going to be the part that you look forward to the most? Like, what is the sector that you want to be revolutionized by AI the most? I mean, I think that journalism is something that you're working on right now, which I totally get. I'm seeing a lot more people go to ChatGPT or to Claude or even the Google AI, Gemini, to get basic answers to questions that reference articles. That I think that that's something that it definitely exists. But certainly, as a founder in this space, you might have some other thoughts or some other insights about some places that are just ripe for innovation from artificial intelligence.
Yeah, to me, one area that I'm excited about, and it's probably relevant to you as well, is the like clinical research.
Mm.
It's really interesting. So, like, we were talking to a company that was trying to kind of figure out what to do with this large corpus of pharmaceutical research data they have about
Mm.
basically like every single clinical trial that's ever been run on for pharmacy drugs. And you think about, we're not quite ready for this, but if you think about the fact that like a human couldn't ever possibly digest every single study that's ever happened, find, kind of correlations or unexpected findings about like, well, this study didn't test for this variable, but maybe if it had done it this way, then, based on this other study, then we might have expected this outcome. Like there has to be, in my mind, some nuggets of like pretty amazing discovery that have just been sort of locked away, because even though for a long time we've had in basically every industry like more data than we know what to do with, it's like the challenge of data has always been like accessibility, and it's siloed, and certain people have access to some part of it but not another. And so if you have a brain that is essentially infinite, like an artificial brain versus a human brain, I think that the possibilities for things like eradication of disease and drug discovery and just general improvements across healthcare research are going to be explosive in the next, at least the next decade. I hope sooner, but it's an area that I don't spend a lot of time in, but it's one that I always think we've not even scratched the surface of what's possible.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is when you were saying that, I feel like that is such a foundational change that it would accelerate the advances. It would accelerate technological advancement just at baseline, right? So those genetic changes or genetic advancements or pharmacological advancements or surgery advancements there might be independent teams that are working on them. But if you have something like that that's able to cross-reference everything, like it would just rise the level of technological advancement just in general. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. We're living in such an exponential time, and I always love talking to people like you that are on like the bleeding edge of it, because I do think that AI is really kind of pushing all of us forward. It's this foundational technology that we really don't know enough about. Unless we're talking to somebody like you that is in it. So thank you so much for enjoying, spending time with us and sharing with us your insight. We are getting close to the end of the time that we have together. So I did want to end with our three main questions that we ask all of our guests. The first of which is, we kind of touched on science fiction. That's kind of an inspiration for me. And this is something that I really feel like I'm a techno optimist. I look at utopian visions like, Star Trek and some of these other, pie in the sky futures. And I look at that and I'm like, man, I'm really excited to have my own robot that's able to do my dishes and flying cars and all that stuff. But what about you? Like you're in this kind of bleeding edge industry. What is inspiring for you?
I think what's inspiring for me is that I've been in technology my whole career. I started in software, and I've seen different sort of waves kind of come and go. And to your point about exponential, there's nothing that comes close to what's happening with AI. Like, I think Sam Altman has a quote where it's like, AI is a technology that people both underestimate and overestimate, but at the end of the day, it's by far an underestimation. And I think that if you're as close to it as sort of we are and what we're doing in Infactory and, being here in kind of the epicenter of it all, what you see is like every day advances that, used to be measured in months and years are now being measured in weeks. And the idea that like your dream of the self-serving or the robot assistant is no longer like that far from science fiction. Like, we are living in like a time that I think is hard to imagine even 10 years ago could have existed, but it's moving at such a pace that like I get very excited that the future is really unfolding now. And it's not it's something for like our grandchildren to experience. It's like, no, we're going to experience, and our children are certainly going to experience it. Like, it's like the world is going to be a very different place next year, and it's going to be a crazy different place 5 years from now. So yeah, I think that's exciting and inspiring.
That's exciting and inspiring for people like you and me. I think both of us are really excited about change. I can tell you that not everybody is. A lot of people look at AI as being this, really concerning thing that is, an existential threat to humanity. What do you say to those people? I'm sure you probably have people around you that feel the same way. Maybe not so much in Silicon Valley, but maybe in your family or something like that. But it sounds like you're very optimistic about AI. So what would you say to those people?
Yeah, I think what I would say is, first of all, those fears are completely relevant, and I don't dismiss them offhand at all. I think that there are real risks to this technology. I think that we have to build it in a responsible way. It's why, we're focused on things that we are here at Infactory, and why I've chosen to make this sort of the focus area around trust and accuracy and, human created content still playing a role. So it's not a given. It's not inevitable that AI will ultimately be a force for good unless we build it that way and we focus on that. I think what I would also say, though, is that AI is almost this reinforcing thing, where it's sort of what I was saying about, drug research or, genetic discoveries and things of that nature, where the smarter AI gets, it's almost like, does AI get smart enough to solve some of its own problems, right? Like, one of the biggest concerns I have about AI is the environmental impact and the energy consumption that it takes to power up these data centers. There's obviously improvements happening there around, just requiring less GPU and compute to actually run the models, but the demand is growing. So how much is that really helping? But I also believe that if anything is going to solve, things like the climate crisis, or things like, how do we make a more energy efficient, data center, it's probably AI. Yeah. So, it's like the ironic part of it. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so, I think that capacity, I think, is important. And, it's like any technological revolution. There's always disruption. There's always a degree of fear and anxiety, and even real pain. Like, I don't discount that either. I do believe people's jobs are going to change. They already are. I think the nature of what work is going to change. I don't know if we're going to have, I don't know if by the time my son has a job, he's 4 now, whether there will be something like a 40-hour work week, and many of the jobs that people do now, I don't know if they'll really exist. But I think that doesn't necessarily mean that humanity comes crashing down. I think it means that, like, our experiences as humans might fundamentally change for the better.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, insight. I think that I never really thought about it like using it as a tool to solve the problems that we're facing. I thought of it more of like this kind of novelty that would make our lives easier. But certainly, obviously, that's something that people like you are probably thinking about. Okay, so second question. Normally, I would ask somebody in like 10 years, where do you see AI? But I feel like that's like not even like a real question. It's like, who knows, right? Like, it's happening at such a breakneck pace. But you have
you can't predict a year from now.
Exactly, right? Like, so it's like not even applicable here. But you have young kids, I have young kids. What do you think that their lives are going to be like with AI?
As I was saying, I definitely think the nature of work is going to be completely different. So I think many of sort of the traditional occupations of knowledge work and of sort of more like what we would call essential workers, or manual work, will look very different if they exist at all. I think that as a result, I think that people's day to day is going to look completely different, and ideally they will have more time to pursue, passions and creative pursuits and potentially like more high functioning creative type roles. It's funny, like I've been joking that it's like soft skills are finally cool again. Like I was a history major, which, is like so impractical. And yet now it's like, oh, do you actually like know how to interact with other humans and communicate? That's like something that is still not fully automated by AI. So focusing on some of the human side instead of what you're good at. And I also think that in terms of where you're talking about what like technology could look like as far as, robots in the home or things replacing like their day to day. I think that like those things will be real for them. Like they won't be science fiction at all. Like I think that that's our parents, maybe thought we'd have flying cars, and clearly that didn't happen. But our kids will have self-driving cars. They will have at-home robotics that are doing kind of the drudgery tasks for them. They will have personalized assistants and agents. They will have the ability to record basically any memory or any moment from their lives. Like all of that will be very, very real for them.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. So last question, it seems like you're, at this really incredible time with this really incredible technology, but outside of your own field of artificial intelligence, what technology or what kind of scientific breakthroughs are you looking at that you just can't get enough of? So to preface that question, like for example, for me, I'm in medicine. I cannot get enough of these humanoid robots. Like every time there's like a new Boston Dynamics video, I'm watching it. Every time there's like a new Tesla Optimus video, I'm watching it. So like for me, humanoid robots, that's the thing. Like I feel like that's such a metric for we are living in the future. And even though it's not my field in particular, it's something that I'm following tangentially. But what about you? Outside of artificial intelligence, what are you looking at?
Self-driving cars for sure. So here in the Bay Area, we have Waymo now. Now Zoox, I think, just launched in certain parts of the Bay Area. So I use Waymo instead of Uber. Waymo now has larger market share in the Bay Area than Lyft does. Kind of wild. And it just feels so cool every time. Like the tourists come and take photos of it, and I still am not like jaded about it. Every time I get in and you see the car with nobody in it, it just feels so miraculous. It's funny. One of my co-founders actually was featured on Waymo's Twitter page because they took a Waymo to City Hall when they got married, because they're also like Waymo super fans. It's now the thing that like when people come to visit, and like we have to ride in a Waymo. Like that's more important than like going to the ferry building. We got to do that if we're in San Francisco. So partly because as I said, I commute. I hate the fact that I have to drive 2 hours. I think about all the time I could get back if I could take a self-driving car to and from where I need to go. I think about the safety implications of that. Like as a parent, I dread the day. I'm a long way off from it, but I know I'm going to be terrified when my son gets behind the wheel of a car. And now I'm thinking maybe he never will have to, because, it will be done for him. And I think it will be safer than human error. So self-driving cars, I hope we continue to see that expand outside into other cities in the US.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to when that's a standard application on all cars, but not quite there yet. Hopefully we'll get there soon. But I think that this was a really interesting conversation, and I really appreciate you coming on. All the best of luck with all of the stuff that you're doing, and I hope that you guys succeed in making not only journalism, but just all AI very true to the facts and very, very adherent to veracity. And for all of those of you guys who are listening on a regular basis, thank you guys for joining in. As always, if you could like and subscribe, and let us know if there's anything else that you want to talk about other than artificial intelligence and all the other technological breakthroughs that we're talking about. But Brooke, thanks again. And for those of you guys who are tuning in on a regular basis, we will see you in the future. Thanks, everybody.
We appreciate you taking part in today's episode. Take this chance to reimagine a better future by joining a community of futurists who strive for a remarkable world. Be a part of this growing network and contribute to making the world a more positive place. Visit thefuturistsociety.net. and subscribe to the show so you don't miss a drop of hopeful futurism.